Welcome! In this video we will create not one but two programs to act as client and server applications in the PowerBasic Console Compiler. We will use the User Datagram Protocol, UDP, to communicate between two separate computers on the same network. Today we're going to make use of the User Datagram Protocol, UDP, to communicate between two separate computers on the same network. To do this, we will need two applications. We will need a client application and a server application. The server application will sit and wait for requests coming from the client application and will respond when it receives a request. First of all then, we're going to write our client application. So this will be a standard PowerBasic Console Compiler application, again set to compile to an exe with all variables dimensioned, and we set up the skeleton of the main function which will start off the program. So in this one there are a couple of things we'll want to set up. Obviously we'll need to know the name of the computer we're actually going to be talking to as the server, so we will set a global variable up to contain the name of our server. A simple string will do. In addition to that, we will need to know the port number over which we're going to communicate. Now, we'll create a port number which is well away from the ordinary port numbers used on the computer. 16001, that should be high enough. And in here, the PB main, we're actually going to set up the beginnings of our communication. So first thing to do, we will set the name of the server we're going to connect to. And there's our server name. Now, we'll want to do the setting up of the standard console, so we'll just paste in the details of the console. Now, what we want to do, we want to query the server. We want to send the server a request and wait for a reply. So we'll need a variable to hold our reply, which will come back from the server. And we will call a function. Let's call it query UDP server. And we're going to give it some kind of command. So let's try a command list. Now at that point we should get a result back, so we'll throw it to the console. Whatever the result we got back. And then we will basically terminate the program. So all this is going to do is it will set up the name of the server we're going to talk to. It will call a function to pass this data to the server, and it will take back a result and display it on screen. So all we need to do now is to write the name of the function. Now this function is going to be returning a string, and we will take in here a variable which we're going to pass to the server and hopefully get a result back. So what we're going to do in here, now we're going to be using an inbuilt command called UDP to open a UDP port onto the network to connect to our server at the far end. So there's a few things we'll need to actually set up. I've prepared a few variables we'll need to use, and we'll just paste these in. So we'll need to know the IP address of this machine. We'll need to have the IP address of the machine we're going to broadcast to, we'll need to have a handle, basically like a file handle, for the connection to the UDP server. We will want a buffer to take our data coming back from the server. I've also set up an IP address for the address of the sending machine, which will be the same as this machine. And the port we want it to be applied to, a timer to keep track of how long we're waiting for something coming back, a basic counter, and something for a status. So how are we actually going to do this? Well, first thing to do is we need to get this machine's IP address. Now, PowerBasic gives you a quite easy command, get host address, which basically gets the IP address of the machine our program is running on and puts it into the IP variable. Very easy to do. And what we need to do next is we need to do exactly the same but for the server. So in here we will paste in host address, the name of the server, to this variable here. So we now have two IP addresses. So the next thing to do is actually to open the channel communications. And to do this, we want to pick up a file handle, just like we would when we were opening a file, which basically gives us a number we can use. We're going to use the UDP command to open as the file handle we got a moment ago. And we can set a timeout of, say, 5 seconds. And we'll put an as in there. Right, okay. This will open. Now, if any error happens, you can test on the error function. We'll just quit at that point. We won't do any special error handling. If we can't talk to the far end, we can't talk to the far end. So if we get down to here, then we've obviously opened the connection. Just put this uppercase. We've opened the connection to the server at the far end. Now, what we'll want to do is we want to actually build up the data we want to send to the server at the far end. This is where a buffer variable comes in. And we want to send possibly 2 bits of information, just in case there's lots of other information flying across the network. We'll divide our information into 2 parts. We will put in it the name of the server we want to talk to first, and we will build up with a string delimited by a pipe character, and since this is what we're asking of the server, we will put that in. So our buffer is going to contain the name of the server we want to talk to and the value we want to pass to it. Now we want to wait until we get something back. So what we'll do here, I'll just paste in the rest of the function to save you watching me do all the typing. Now, what we're doing here is we're picking up the number of seconds since midnight. We're checking to see if 5 seconds have elapsed. The error clear command actually makes sure there's nothing lying around in the error function. And we're going to wait. We're going to on a receiving from the port number we've opened, from the IP address, IP port, and the buffer. So at this point, we're actually going to sit and wait until the connection times out for a value to be put into the IP buffer. Now, if we do get an error, then we're basically just looping around again. Assuming we actually didn't get an error, then the function will pick up the value that's in the buffer, what we got back from the server. it will close the UDP connection completely and it will exit the function. Otherwise we just drop through and we'll keep this loop going. And eventually if we do get down and we still haven't received anything, it will just close the loop and the function will return an empty length string. So that's it. That is all we need in our client function. Now, possibly for letting us see what's happening on the screen, we may want a bit of command to put something out to the console. So up here we will put in a console output command, and we'll say we're sending to, now the IP address of the machine we're sending to is actually a number. We want to turn that into something we can actually see, a nice easy to read number. So we're going to create a little function. This one's going to be a macro function. Which is going to take the IP number that we've used, and we're actually going to turn it into a nice easy to read string. So how do we do that? We haven't used macros before. Macros are very powerful. So what we'll actually do here, we will create a macro using the macro prefix. And we'll put in the name of the macro and the parameter. Now, what we're doing here is we're using the macro temp command. Macros are very powerful in PowerBasic. You can do a great deal inside the macro function. Effectively, macro functions are actually created inside your code at compile time. And if a macro is not referenced in the code, then nothing goes into your code. So it's a very efficient way of actually doing things. Now we're using a pointer here, which again is another very powerful way of actually doing things. And the return from the macro in this case is going to use the using command. And we're going to basically format the output of our value to give us the 4 elements that we have in an IP address. Assuming I've worked this out correctly. And we use a pointer to our x variable. And we're basically doing this as pointer to the element. So that's the first one. We want the second one. And we want the third one. So that's the 0, the 1, the 2, and the 3. And then close off our bracket. Now, if we've actually keyed this correctly, this might even compile. So, let's take this into our code, and what should we call this program? Well, since this is the client, I think we'll call it CC for Console Compiler, and we'll call it Client, UDP Client, yes. Oh, no, so we can spell UDP Client. Right, there we go. Now, will it compile? Nope. I've missed a loop. Oh yes. I missed the beginning of the loop. And I've misspelled a variable. That should be exit function. Right, okay, we have a program. Right, so this is a client program. Now all we have to do now is to write the server half of this program. So we will create a new application, and this will be our server one. So what's our server one going to do? Well, basically the server one is a listening program. It's going to sit and it will wait for information coming in. Now we're going to include in the standard Windows 32 API encode file, because we'll be using some of the functions inbuilt with that. And we'll probably need some globals. We'll need the name of the server. We'll need an IP address. And we'll need a file handle. And our port number, of course. And the port number we used in the last one was 16001, and obviously we've got to talk over the same port number. So that's our global setup, and one constant. So in here, what we'll want to do is, again, we'll need to set the value of the server. What's the server name called? Now we set earlier we're going to run it on this particular machine. And we will want to have a standard console. So we'll just pick that up. There's a console. Normally your server code you won't actually be watching it happening, but just for the purposes of this we want to actually see what's going on. And the same as we did before, we want to pick up the IP address of the machine we're on. We'll want to open up a UDP port. So we need a handle. And again, as before, we want to open port. Let's see, port as HUDP, and we'll set a longer timer in this one of say a minute. So we'll sit and wait for a minute for any incoming transmission. And what we can also do is make beep beep noises if there's any errors. And it can exit if that's the case. So we've opened a port, and we'll use the same approach as we did in the other one, in that we'll put a message out to the console just to let us see what it's doing. So it's going to be listening, so we need the dotted IP function as well, the macro we had before, so we'll just paste that one in from the other program. Nice bit of code reuse. So we've opened a channel. We have about to start listening. So first thing to do is to have a request variable, which we haven't defined yet. So we need to define that one up here. So this is a variable that's going to take in what we're getting from the client program. So before we do anything, we'll just make sure that's completely blank. We'll create a function that actually processes the requests. And then we want a way of actually closing this server application down, otherwise it would run forever. So we'll get it to pick up an exit command, so the client will send an exit. And when we receive the exit, we'll exit from our loop. And if we don't exit from the loop, we want to give the process a wee bit of breathing space, so we'll give it a bit of sleep time. Now we'll want all this in a loop, so we'll do a do loop at the beginning. And there we go, there's a loop. And once we actually break out of the loop, we want to close down the handle we created, and basically that's the end of the function. But we may want to leave it on screen for a few seconds just so we get a chance to actually see what it's done. So we'll give it a 5-second sleep. So all we have to do now is to write the thing that processes the request. So we've opened up the port to listen. We haven't actually started listening yet, but we've opened the port to do the listening. Our fun process request function is going to do all the listening for us. So we're about to create that function. And this is when it's going to do all the work. So what will we actually need? Well, like the other program, we're going to need many of the same kind of variables, so we'll just paste them in. There we go. We'll need a buffer, a couple of variables to handle data, IP address, port number, target server. Right, now we have to start listening. We'll clear the error function first, just in case there are any errors. We'll use the UDP command to do a receive on our port number. From IP address. That's the IP address the request is coming from. That's the port it's coming from. And this is the data that's going to be coming in. Now we know the data is coming in two halves. The first part is the name of the server it's pointed at, and the second part is the data. So we will use the target server there to pick up the first value. So we use the parse command which we've used before, and the variable is buffer. We're doing pipe delimited, and we want first element. So this should pick up the name of the server. So just in case the client sends the server name in lowercase, we'll force everything coming back to uppercase. And then we can quite happily print out to the console what we've received. Value of the buffer. Now, just in case we actually expand this program and actually have several clients and several servers all talking to each other, we'll double check to make sure that if the name of the target server coming in doesn't match what this server, in other words, it's not really for us, then what we can do, we can send a message back to the machine that sent us it to say this one isn't for us. So we'll send a UDP send command again to the port number, and since we picked up the IP address earlier and the port number, we know which port it's coming in on. And we'll give it a string. So let's give it something like something like that. We'll send that string back to the thing, and at that point our communication is actually done with this machine anyway, so we'll exit the function. So if we get into here, then obviously we have picked up a request that is entirely for this machine. Just missing bracket in. So we'll pick up the request, and again we'll do the same as we did before. Make sure it's all uppercase, and we will basically just parse it in. In fact, we'll take that whole string because we want the second element of what's in the buffer. So we want the second element. Right, okay. So at this point we should have received exactly what we're after. Now, just in case there are any errors, we'll put elaborate error handling in at some point in a later video. We can print out to the console what we've received. Now, having received a request, we know in our client program in here we were basically sending a value, and the value we were sending was list. So we needed something that actually handles that list. So we can use the select command basically to decide what we do in each value of str request. So if it happens to be a list, then we can send a message back, just as we did up here. Just copy that line, paste it in, and what we'll send is some data going back. Although we're just sending a string here, this could be absolutely anything. Right, and if they're sending exit, and we wanted a way of actually exiting, so we'll do the same. We will put in that, and we'll say exiting. Just clean up here, and the select. Now, what if they send us something other than that? Something that's not on our list. So I need a generic going back, and again we'll basically maybe say not accepted, same as we did up here. So that's a mere 82 lines of code. Will it compile? Yes, it will. And we will call this one, I think we'll call it, yeah, overwrite that one. Right, okay. So we have two programs now. We have a client and we have a server program. So what we'll need to do for this one is we'll need to copy our server program onto this other machine. So let's go on to the other machine. Right, we've copied the UDP server program onto our other machine. So we need to remote connect to that machine so we can actually run our program. So let's do a remote connect, and we'll connect to quad 4. Right, we're in. There's a server program. Now if we kick off the server running, this is a server running quite happily, and it's listening for broadcasts. We want to run our client program. Now our client program at the moment is just going to send the command list, and then basically it's going to wait and exit. So if we try running that now, it's doing bugger all. Why is it doing bugger all? So the server code is actually running on the Quad 4 server, listening for broadcasts from us. At the moment we have one command to go to the server. Now what we want to do is possibly add some more commands. So what we'll do is we will dream up some more commands to send, and we'll basically paste them in. So we want to send 2 more commands, so we'll colon these lines of code, and the last command we're going to send will be an exit command to tell the process on the server that's waiting for our broadcast to terminate, and we'll send it something else that's not going to expect to see, for example TV. Now if we save that, compile our program, and we'll just run our program in the background. There it's running, and there we go. We have sent the list, the TV, and the exit, and we've got the response back from the server saying accepted, not accepted, and exiting. So if we run that again just to see what's happening on the server side, so if we run the server again to listen, and then we run the client again, there we go, it's received list, TV, and exit. And after 5 seconds, the server terminates. So what we have is we have created 2 applications, one client and one server, both using the UDP protocol to actually communicate with each other. It's important to understand that what we've written in here is entirely inside PowerBasic and the operating system. We have not used any external applications, any external libraries, or not even .NET. Purely uses PowerBasic and the operating system itself. Using this approach, what we'll do in later videos is we will actually use the server to hold our data, and we will use the client application to query that data, acting as a true client-server application. Thank you for watching.